I go here when it comes to this stuff.
When I'm
Hold on.
acting crazy, no, she don't fuck. She
It's,
won't cut when I'm
Look at this
getting
Minahan,
lazy. You gotta kick
Morgan.
back,
Many of you I know are familiar with.
get that train back.
I am running this whole thing by myself today for the first time, as Alice has suspended all of her podcast activity, including my own podcast, the Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel. And so it is just us today, and we'll see how it goes. So far, I've got this, I think, up and running, and you can hear me, and I can hear you, and everything is good. All right, so let's get right to it. First of all, the basketball game, absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I cannot believe I haven't watched a basketball game, like any basketball game, since that year, since the Celtics won it with Garnett and whatever, where I watched like the NBA Finals, like last 3 games. I don't care about basketball. I'm not a basketball guy. But when I got to the KMS game a little bit late, and immediately drawn in by how good the play-by-play was. First of all, it was freaking incredible. Those guys were great. Josh was great. It's Josh and Jack, right? Those guys are great. I was thrilled. And also the action on the court. They, first of all, for somebody, I wouldn't know about basketball if it was like a real game. Needless to say, a pickup game. But those guys, they were not only working well off of each other. Did they know each other? I don't think so, right? One of those guys is Coleman's partner, right? But they had very good chemistry. They weren't talking over each other. They both had some color and X's and O's stuff to say. They both had a sense of humor. They made the content with picking out things that would later be able to be used for the show. That was brilliant and just spot on. And it really, because I wouldn't know what to look for. I could see that some people were a mess and some people were doing well. And obviously, like Gus cracking his head in the ground. And like hustling like a madman was fantastic, and all the Coleman stuff was just disgracefully wonderful. And those guys pointed it all out, especially when Coleman tried to take himself out of the game because he was winded or something. It was so good to watch, and you can see Kirk was not messing around. He was not pleased. He was absolutely trying and competitive as hell, and good. Obviously, good. You could tell. I mean, I'm an old fat guy, so like you would see old fat guy in me. You could see Kirk, he's a guy near 50 now. There's no doubt about that. But you could tell that like his body knew what it was meant to do. It's just an older version now. But he was great. And the drips were fantastic. And here's another thing. And I don't know anything really about sports, but I think these guys are going to do well this year. Now they know what they have. You've got a leader who's going to throw himself all over the place and sacrifice himself for the team, which is inspiring. It's going to make people like the Drips do the same thing. We saw in Portland how he got up there and he danced and took his shirt off, and those guys gave it their all to him. I think they're absolute ride or die people. I thought it was a fucking great spectacle, and I enjoyed watching it. And as it got closer, you could tell that things were up. I do think that he should let Pat Gilroy back on the team, just to be competitive. I mean, I think these guys, if they played that same team, I think that they could do well. I think that we saw something was born in Belmont, and I think it's going to be exciting as hell, especially when Minifans get in there. That league has no idea what it's in for. They have no idea. Now, other teams, if they've got Minifans or Barstool-minded people, certainly they'll be able to adjust. I would think they'll be able to adjust, but good luck if not, because that is going to turn that world upside down. And, I mean, talk about also, here's another thing. It's also just like great marketing for the show and for Barstool to get in there to expose that whole world. And by the way, there's so much potential to it, but the actual basketball itself, I enjoyed very much, very much. Okay, which brings me to, I have ideas on how to make it better. I did actually offer Menners just the basketball part. I did offer or ask Menners to come on because he's a play-by-play guy and a tech guy too, and he big timed me, which is great to know. But that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I guess the only guy I could ask about that kind of stuff is John and Warren, who's big into that stuff. But I just wanted kind of a tech guy. But their Josh, the play-by-play was great. I thought their mic quality was fine too. As somebody who's done a lot of like remote stuff and had to set it up and one man band stuff, I can tell you one thing is that you get one good graphics guy in there, not necessary, but if you did, and then just like one other tech person with a boom mic, and so that you can hear the action on the court in the Nat sound and the Kirk yelling at everybody, the thing could be a damn good broadcast because Tim's camera work was really good, but you could use one or two more shots certainly because we're stuck with that shot. He's in the far corner of the court, so it was it was all it could be. But if you had two more Tims in there, I'm sure Minifans would volunteer to hold another camera. Really, these things, it was really enjoyable. It was really enjoyable, and the fact that everybody was playing, well, not everybody was playing with passion, but at least most people, not really Coleman, I guess, but everybody else, and even Coleman, he is fascinating to watch on that court. He's like Spalding from Caddyshack. He is so unmotivated, such a drub and an oaf, such a just a sloth, and at the same time he's this ultimate. And Coleman's like I'm fat like Coleman. I might be fatter than him technically in pounds. I don't even know, but I'm fat, not like barrel chested, like the big fat guy. Like I like my man big. I'm fat in a disgraceful way where it's all like breasty and side breasts and primary roll, and like it's not fat earned by like bar fights and pints and stuff like that. My fat is just, it's disgraceful. People hate me. I'm definitely a black t-shirt guy at the pool. Coleman's not, which is remarkable that like I am, because I'm disgraceful and I should be shamed for letting this happen. But Coleman, it's a generational thing. I'm 51 and he's like 24. They coached everybody up so much to have a good self-esteem, like at the millennials and below, that like he has no problem. Yeah, I'll walk out there with all fat spilling out, and I assume, I don't know about in his case, but that this is a thing with the millennials, like fat millennials who are shirtless and look like me. You get to have sex with actual women. Times have changed. They definitely changed for women. Like in 1991, if you showed us like J-Lo at her biggest, and although people did see her back then, she was a fly girl, but that would not be acceptable. You'd be like, that's a fat chick. But things have changed, I guess that's good. I guess I thankfully things have changed so that like my own wife, who's a millennial, looked at me and did not vomit. But anyway, so that's my suggestion for that, is that if they could get just a couple more just dudes holding cameras. And I would never have suggested that if it had just been footage or crappy play-by-play, but the play-by-play guys were fantastic. So like you're already at this level here that was totally unexpected. So if you're already there, then hey, then why not just do the tiny little tweaks it takes to go even further? All right. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is this, because I wasn't on. I was specifically not on Mike and the Minifans last night, but I called in because my wife had told me or found out that Boston is having a comic show soon, like a Comic-Con kind of thing, and Boston Fan Expo, June 14th through 16th. And I've dealt with these guys for about 12 years. When I was at the Herald, anytime you could get a celebrity on, I had a radio station there. you would book if I could book a guest like that, like Adam West um from Batman, or anybody from like Leave It to Be, whatever it was, didn't matter, or a show from the '80s, whatever. Those guests, if we could interview them, that they would certainly write that up and online and in print, and it fit right in the demo. But so I've dealt with a lot of these promoters for these companies, and so now I'm going to go into a mode that I do not respect, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to go into um the lowest person in the universe of radio consultants. Or no, radio are radio consultants, and they look like, unfortunately, they look like me. Like right now I'm actively in radio currently while it exists. Um, but like if I suddenly get laid off, I'll have two options. I can just be underemployed like Mutt, or I can be in PR, which I would rather put a shotgun in my mouth, or I could probably be a radio consultant. I've actually done a little bit of that before. That's when you tell, ideally, you're telling clueless people how the fundamentals of radio. The problem is, and Kirk knows this way too much, is that they bring in these radio consultants for people who already know what they're doing, but for some reason they're somehow budgeted or doing somebody a favor. Somebody's going to give their consultant who they used to work with, in Kansas City and in 1989, going to do him a favor by giving him $1,000 of billable hours, whatever. And these people are the worst. I remember not only would they all be fat guys when they'd come in to talk to us, but they'd all love the free lunch. It'd always have a working lunch, and they would go right in. If we had Panera or whatever, they would go right in for the chips and eat and talk about the chips. It was so gross, so disgusting. But I'm going to play radio consultant today, and I know that this is disgraceful. But I've been in radio. I've been in radio for about 20 years, one way or another. I have not had another thing that makes me like most radio consultants. I have not had the success, let's say, of Kirk, Jerry, and those guys over there. But we've had some high points, etc. This is Fan Expo coming in June. This is my consulting for the show. That things that could give Kirk the opportunity to concentrate on what he's brilliant at rather than have to do other stuff. So I told Coleman this last night when I called up to Mike and the Minifans. I said, book these guests. This Fan Expo coming to Boston has Rosario Dawson, Marissa Tomei, she's an Oscar winner, a whole bunch of other people who I don't know. Chevy Chase, who obviously we know. Alan Tudyk was on Firefly. Randy Quaid, Beverly D'Angelo. And the two leads from Saved by the Bell, the dudes. A lot of those guys are definitely guys that Kirk is all for and would be very much interested in. So my feeling is that those guys the producers need to get on right now and find the promoter's name and book some of these guys. Or at least get a green lit to have these people on, and then run it by Kirk on the air that these are the people. Do you want them, etc. And if he says no, don't waste my time, whatever, then it's fine. At least you've got them. At least you've gotten ahead of the game, and you've got fresh content ideas, and they're going to need to push tickets, so they will want to be on a Boston Barstool show. Absolutely, that is prime, because a lot of these people I mentioned the old people. There's a lot of young people too. But you got to get a hold of the promotions guy and ask him who you have, and he'll want to do it. These guys, the promotion guys for these things are like over the top anxious. They seem like they're coked up, or the promoters, and they fed us never-ending people when I was at the Boston Herald, and it was great. And I loved them. But the guys, all the surviving Star Trek people, Nimoy, Shatner, etc. All sorts of and younger people too. There was the woman from Firefly. We had a bunch of young comic people that I didn't know, comic book people that I didn't know, and etc. And we took almost everybody, because the more you take everybody, the more the promoter's going to like you and say, okay, I'll get you the big dog if you can take this. And that's something that Justin and Coleman could do. They could take some of the shit people and use them on, not the main show, obviously, but ancillary shows. Just use it. Just throw it right up in YouTube or something as like a surplus in hand, whatever it is. But he could have access to all these people. So I would say, first of all, be out there and connect with these promoters. That's number one. Also, with guest booking, um, I would hope that you're forging relationships. They're forging relationships with publishers, book publishers, Regnery, whoever it is, or all of them. Forge relationships with them. Reach out. Let them know that they're there and that you want to get authors on, etc. Because a lot of times, even if they say, you know what, we're going to send Max Weinberg onto AM radio stations because that's like their hit sheet, and they think that's where they're going to get the most ROI. At some point, they're going to be low on hits, and their client's going to be saying, or in house, Weinberg's going to be saying, well, how come nobody wants to talk to me? And they're going to need to get him somebody. And so if you're in front of people, then, sorry, then eventually it'll pay off. It reminds me, actually, I made a couple of notes because one time we had a radio consultant, something that they do totally. They're clueless always. But one time we had, on the show that I was part of, we had this, like radio message thing, like the whiner line or the chump line. And the consultant took me aside and took me in his office and went through like 35 different messages and said, well, why do you find this funny? You played this one. What's funny about this? It's typical how they're terrible. Okay. The other thing I would do is in the studio, and this is just me. And remember, I'm playing fat consultant guy right now. But I would, in the studio, have another camera shot that shows a little bit more stuff going on. And I would also, and just do this on trade, find some handyman and make it so in the studio. I know nobody asked me. I realize that. And this is Kirk. If Kirk gets this far in, and I doubt he will have, the moment I start giving advice, or then he's going to say it. But, can you make it in the studio so that the guests can see the producers? It's ridiculous. Everybody looks so clueless, looks over to the right, and they're never seeing anybody over there. It's not a winning thing. Unless something has changed, it's absolutely it's no go. I can't have that. By the way, the studio, another byproduct of doing the doing outreach for guests is that's all content that you can use on the air as well. Pretty soon they're going to be telling you who's available. You can use that on the air. So that's content. And I heard people complaining on Mike and the Minifans last night about this, that it seems like sometimes that the producers are out of stuff and they go right to, oh, did you see, what this Barstool person did and this Barstool person did, and that seems like when they're out of gas sometimes. And I definitely think that there are times when, like when Alice was on and Cinema Lords was on, you could tell pretty quickly into it that it was going to be Kirk and Justin mostly, and those other two weren't going to pipe up or be content sources like, in the way that Kirk fished for it first. Alice was very minimal, which we got in a fight about, and Cinema Lords was kind of reserved too. And it seems like they weren't going to they weren't going to get in a brawl in this studio, and so anyway, so the point is that that it would be good for Kirk to have, for the producers to have more levels of stuff to do for him. And this idea that you would have we would call it 20 years ago, a Rolodex, is a good idea. Or at least, kind of industry knowledge. And Justin has some of this. But like Dave Cullinane had a Rolodex. Steve Robinson had and still has a Rolodex. There's like, he's got resources in every field. They've both got because those guys, and I hate and I'm gonna sound like an a-hole, By the way, I'm sorry. I've got a cold, and also I've got a burn barrel and it's up and running again. And I'm between that and mowing the lawn now, I ingest so much freaking stuff. I don't know what kind of cancer is going to fell me, but it's probably soon. Um, but yeah, with like those guys are from radio. And I don't think I understand that's old. Radio's old, etc. But there are skills you get from being on the radio that are still pretty good and needing to be resourceful because you're feeling like real live air and it, you know, every person you can get for every quarter hour like matters. Or I'm not saying you have to be guest heavy. Kirk and Mike could shoot the breeze all day. And um and they'd be funny. There's no doubt about that. Or Kirk and oh, what's his name from Polar, Great Polar. Those could just do it all day. I think Kirk and Andy Mayo could do it all day. I think Andy Mayo is freaking fantastic. I don't know why everybody hates him. I think he is freaking fantastic. I think Mick is well. You didn't come here for this. Anyway, this was my first show without Alice. I'm going to find out how to um, integrate other things into the show with the lights and buzzards, etc. I just want to get my 2 cents out there on the on what happened in Belmont, which was the basketball team. It's fantastic, and then also talk about just small things about because I hope this Comic Con thing is coming to Boston. Now that I've mentioned it, there's a chance that Kirk just won't want anybody from it. But some of those people, I mean, hearing him talk about Marissa Tomei would be interesting. She's an Oscar winner. She's a good actress. It was like they were when they came to Boston. She and Tarantino came to Boston because they were doing a play together. And I'm going to try to get her, by the way, for my own show. Because actually, I remember I was at a bar in Beacon Hill, and late night, and those two and everybody else from the play came in, and everybody had a great time, and they were getting drunk. Everybody was drunk and awesome, and Tomei was great, and they were asking the bartender, "Let's stay open later, past happy hour, after hour." And the guy's like, "Well, we got to close, but I'll see if there's somebody in Cambridge who can take you." And at one point, she's up on the bar dancing, and he's like, "Please get Marissa Tarantino saying, please get Marissa Tomei a drink. She's an Oscar Academy Award winner, Marissa." And they were so funny, and everybody was fun. They were having a good time. I said hi to him. We talked to her. It was just like anybody else, like hanging out, just drinking in Beacon Hill, and they were just really cool and down to earth. I said something idiotic to Tarantino, which is just dumb. It was I had a girlfriend at the time, Supple, in Connecticut at the time, and I said, and I wrote on this piece of paper, "You should marry Tom Shattuck," and I just asked him, "Hey, do you mind if you can sign this from Quentin Tarantino because it's my girlfriend?" And he's like, "What do you mean, man? Like, what do you? Just tell me what you want." And I said, "Can you just sign this?" And he said, "Okay." But they were so fantastic, and the next day, they were just really friendly people persons. And the next day, there was a Herald article about them that freaking slammed them as being like A-list celebrities making demands on everybody. And I thought, man, it would suck to be them, having to know that every time you go through, you're going to get slammed for shit you didn't do, but that's just life. Anyway, maybe I'll ask her about it if I get her on. But I definitely think, and I hope, that Coleman takes advantage of this situation to do the same thing.